Well, hi everybody, meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to tonight's Joe Chaffee weather show, which on a Sunday is usually the Coffee with Chaffee show, which we do at 10 a.m. Excuse me, but I had my schedule turned upside down. Plus, it worked out better to have it tonight than have it this morning. And we've got busy. Certainly was a busy day, and we're talking about the fact that there was going. Excuse me. Been talking about the fact that we may be dealing with this backside, the surface low, the upper low swinging around and moving overhead tomorrow and tomorrow night, and that it was kind of a volatile thing as far as trying to forecast it. And we've been seeing various models doing various things, but it's become a bit more clear during the day today, certainly, that there's going to be some snow tomorrow, and it's going to happen in areas that might have missed out on some of the snow and sleet today. It's been more of a sleet storm than anything else this first round. And one of the things that the NAM was very good with on this particular event was showing the sleet area moving all the way up north into the Hudson Valley, which it did do. And we're also seeing temperatures struggling a bit tonight. But now, of course, we're going to be watching tomorrow with cold air coming back in, a stalled storm right offshore east of New Jersey and south of Long Island, and this big upper air low that's going to be swinging along. So as long as you guys are able to hear me, I can see you on the chat because I got my phone out tonight. So I'm going to be monitoring the chat that way. Makes it a bit easier. And this way I can see what you guys are talking about. And if you have any questions, if you do put up a question while I'm doing my weather stuff, I'll try to catch it on the chat, but I have to sort of look away from time to time. But if I don't, as soon as I'm done with the weather part of the discussion, if you don't mind, just repeat the question in the chat. I'll be able to see it then, and I certainly will be more than happy to address it and answer it if I can. So a couple of things happened late this afternoon and this evening with regards to winter storm watches. They have been, I'm sorry, winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories. They have been expanded, and this is in response to the fact that we've got this situation for tomorrow with the upper low. And I have to tell you, by the way, upper lows we have seen them in the past surprise, where the snow winds up being in bands where over short distances you could have large variations in snow amounts. So it really is going to depend on where those heavy snow bands set up. It's not unusual, by the way, to see those bands set up on the models in one place and have them wind up happening in another. I've been using the analogy of a cold front approaching in the summertime and how models handle the thunderstorms with it. In the days before, you see thunderstorms in one place, and then you look at a new run of a model or two later on, and the thunderstorms are in a different place. Some runs are aggressive, some runs not so much. But you look at the overall scope of things, what's going on in the atmosphere. That is really the most important thing, and you let the models just eventually come into what reality is. That's the best approach with all of this. And Izzy D, I don't know if you're still on, but I did see your question that you left on Patreon with regarding, is this a Norland trough? No, it really isn't a Norland trough, in my opinion. What we're dealing with is the upper low capturing the surface low, causing it to strengthen, and it is going to strengthen quite a bit once it moves towards southeastern New England. So I still think there's still some variables out there, and don't be shocked if you wind up seeing some more changes in the forecast as we move into Monday morning. But winter storm warnings now have been extended southward in New Jersey down to Mercer County, and also advisories up from northeast New Jersey down through Ocean County. We have advisories in New York City now, northern Nassau County, and I think we'll probably see Nassau, southern Nassau, and western Suffolk at least added to this eventually. I think what's happening is with respect to Suffolk County in particular and eastern Long Island, it's more Monday night into into Tuesday morning. So I'm guessing that the Weather Service folks have decided, you know what, why don't we just wait for that area since we have a little bit more time before anything happens. It's going to be another 24 hours before it even starts. So rather than put it up now and create all sorts of confusion, they're kind of hanging back, and it is certainly possible that in northwestern Nassau County and in northern Nassau County and New York City and points west could be snowing late tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening, and you still may wind up with some rain further out to the east on Long Island before the cold air gets in. And of course, the winter storm warnings continue across northeastern Pennsylvania, the Hudson Valley, north of 287, western Connecticut, northern Fairfield, and Litchfield County. You have advisories for coastal Connecticut, and as you go into central and eastern Connecticut into Rhode Island. And we'll probably see those adjusted and changed a bit because eventually the upper low is going to create some issues with snow in that particular area. Winter storm warnings also continue across much of upstate New York, central New England, good chunk of the state of Massachusetts under a winter storm warning, as is the southern half of Vermont and New Hampshire. And we have winter storm watches up for many of the coastal and slightly inland counties in Maine, including Portland and Augusta, as far as the winter storm watches there are concerned. I haven't looked, so we'll look now together for the first time tonight. They probably updated the snow forecast map, and this is where it starts to become a little difficult when you're looking at these maps. Remember, it's been snowing or sleeting up the Hudson Valley and into Massachusetts and into Connecticut. So these numbers you see here are probably in addition to anything that's already on the ground. And by the way, I only have the map up right now through 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So you see where you're seeing some snow, even down in Philadelphia, Trenton. The accumulating snow is going to probably be for many areas for New Jersey and points east tomorrow afternoon into Tuesday morning. For central Pennsylvania, it's probably going to be more tomorrow morning. We'll probably see some snow starting up before daybreak because I think the bigger factor there is going to be what are the temperatures going to be like when all this gets going. But when it's all said and done, we'll put the final numbers here on the map and just move it up to Wednesday morning. So that covers this from beginning to end. And you are seeing some 1 to 2, 3, 4 inch amounts in and around New York City. Trenton, Weather Service giving them 6, Philadelphia 4, the Reading at 4, and then you start to get into an inch or 2 as you get back toward Harrisburg, northern Maryland, northern Delaware. I went actually a little bit more aggressive. I know I'm probably going to bust somewhere with this on my map, which I'll bring up right now. Hang on 1 second. I'll bring it up on the screen. Patreon members, you saw this first today. We put this out about 4 o'clock or so. And I always like to put these maps out, or at least I don't look at, as a rule, I don't look at the forecast maps of the Weather Service until after I've done mine. Now, I may be just a little bit too aggressive on the southern end. But, I'm going to take a shot here because I looked at the NAM. The NAM seems to be handling this system particularly well. And I noticed that the NAM is not only robust in temperatures, but it's a lot colder than some of the other models. And looking at the temperature profiles today and how things have turned out, the other models seem to have overwarmed too far to the north. The northern areas are holding on a lot colder. And even down near some coastal areas, not so much in South Jersey where it's in the middle to upper 40s now, but on Long Island, it's been a real struggle to get the temperatures to climb up above, out of the mid and upper 30s. So we're going to take a look at those numbers in a second. But I'm thinking that the NAM, which has it already cold enough to snow in New York City by tomorrow morning, believe it or not. So I have a general 2 to 4 inch band. I went a little bit lower right along coastal New Jersey, maybe about an inch down in Atlantic City, an inch or 2 further up the coast. And then the band of 2 to 4 west of the Parkway. And then you go a little further west and you've got that area that comes down that I have drawn in the western counties of New Jersey down to about Philadelphia. I put everybody there in a general 3 to 6 inch band. I think the further south you go, you'll be closer to the 3. and the further north you go, you'll be closer to the 6. And this is in addition to whatever's on the ground. So in areas in northwest Jersey, northeast Pennsylvania, the Hudson Valley, and points north, whatever you got on the ground as of right now, just add these numbers. So this will be on top of whatever you wind up finishing with in the overnight period. So it's not the total. Some places it's going to be the total snowfall in for all intents and purposes. In other places, it's going to be additional to whatever's happened today. A couple of additional inches as you go further to the west in Pennsylvania. South central Pennsylvania, southeast Pennsylvania didn't get much of anything today other than some sleet and freezing rain in spots. So this will be a new up to a couple of inches of snow. And the bigger amounts, of course, as you head up into central New England. I just kind of think it makes sense. I'm going to take a shot here given the dynamics. If I wind up being wrong here now, if you look at take a look at the wind barbs. This is, hang on one second here. That one. All right. Well, that's actually pretty close. It's from another map. But right in here, you have your easterly winds at 30, northeast, north, and northwest. So somewhere in here, you've got a low center that has developed. Now the winds they're also northeast over Long Island. So I think the temperature rise may be about, in most areas it probably is about done. We might go up another degree or two, but that's about it. And now at this point, we start to look at what's going on up to the north, because if that northerly wind starts to develop, you're going to start to see some of the colder air that's still up in upstate New York and places up in northern New England. All that cold air is going to get drawn down southward on those northerly winds, and that cold air is going to actually run its way down into Maryland and in northern Virginia, where temperatures are in the upper 30s to around 40. It's in the low and mid 30s across much of southeast and south central Pennsylvania, away from Philadelphia too now. Philadelphia was 44 when I last checked a couple of hours ago. They're down to 39. So we're seeing already temperatures are settling back. And again, that low center definitely forming here, judging by the winds that we're seeing. So everything is happening according to plan. And with regards to what it looks like on the satellite, now here's your upper low is so obvious there, that big rotation spinning around the Great Lakes, and you have that lead arm of moisture that is moving northeastward, and it won't be too long, I think, before the first round of precip is going to be mostly done. Meanwhile, we have another storm that's off the west coast. You can see the rotation on the left side of the satellite picture. Hang on one second. Here I go. Let me move this over so you can see it. But you see the storm is coming inland into the west coast, where we have some action there. And I'll speak to the weather in the west a little bit later on. So on our surface map from earlier today, I'm updating it now. Your primary low is in western Lake Erie. And then we have the front that kind of snakes down. And you'll notice on the 4 o'clock 21Z map, they did actually analyze a 993 low sitting off the Delaware coast. That pressure is actually fairly low. I didn't think it would be as low as that, but 993 is not too shabby. And there's still with the block that's still there. You still have the low is starting to move away now, but you still have the high kind of pinned in there into Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont. So that's sort of holding all this in place and forcing the redevelopment here. That primary low has no place to go now. It's occluded out, it's past its peak intensity, it's weakening, and now it's tossing its energy over to the secondary that is out along the coast. Now your radar will freshen that up, and here comes the back edge. The back edge is making some progress here, folks. It's almost to about New York City, and it'll soon be up into the Hudson Valley and points north. There's some very heavy precip that's moving across Connecticut and back over north of Route 84. In that big area of yellow, there's probably heavy sleet in there that is falling, and that's about to move into Massachusetts. And you've got snow with some sleet mixed in north and west of there through upstate New York and points northward. So there's round one. And now, of course, you would keep our eyes on the rotation that's out to the west, which is our upper low. And that is going to be playing games with us for tomorrow. So, hang on one second. I got to take care of one of my snow removal guys. And that is, we're going to watch, that's the upper low. That's the next round. So, let's take a look at what the NAM is doing. You know what? Before we even go to the surface, I wanted to show you the upper air because that really is the most important thing here. It's a very, very vigorous upper low that is moving east. Here it is. Now you'll see those jet streaks. That was earlier today. The jet streaks over Virginia and up in northern West Virginia, that represented the first arm of precip that lifted up, and that is going through and done. Now the upper low is dropping southeastward and heading over into West Virginia. Northern Virginia is about where it's centered, and now you have some variation in snow amounts over short distances. Whoever gets into those bands is going to wind up getting into some solid accumulating snow. That's going to be really key here. It's going to be all about the track of the upper low that moves off the Virginia coast and then starts to move northeastward to just passing just southeast of Cape Cod by early Tuesday morning. At this point, it's basically captured the surface low, which is going to be intensifying fairly rapidly. And there might actually be, I think, a pretty decent pocket of very heavy snow for southeastern New England with this low as it heads up into the Gulf of Maine. This is going to be really fascinating to see how it plays out tomorrow with regards to the upper low and the banding of the snow. And I think the NAM has a pretty good handle. It's had a pretty good handle on things so far, and I'm sticking with it. So here we go. You can see it was really pretty smart about bringing that sleet fairly far up into almost to I-90, and now going after about, let's see, it's 7:25. So this is the map for 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. You're starting to see that cold air being drawn into the developing coastal low. So the sleet is gradually disappearing and being replaced across Massachusetts and the middle and upper Hudson Valley with mostly snow. That continues throughout the night. Now here we are at 4 a.m. Notice that back in Pennsylvania, you go from sleet and rain to a changeover to snow there as well, because cold air being drawn down on the backside. And by 7 a.m. tomorrow, we've got much of the state of Pennsylvania in snow. It might be in light to maybe some bands of moderate snow possible. We'll see. But I'm kind of impressed with the fact that it's developing so much out west of the surface low. And that's, again, in response to the approaching upper low that's starting to influence the surface low. And you're getting a good inflow of moisture, and you're also getting colder air that's being drawn southward. That surface low goes nowhere tomorrow. It's almost like it's waiting for the upper low to get there. And in fact, we'll probably even see that first low may try and move out to the east or center jump, and out to the western part of that isobar here is more than likely another low. And this is going to be reflecting the upper low. You're going to see a surface low that develops there. Now notice you got all this. This is all snow here for tomorrow night. This is at 9 o'clock tomorrow night. And I guarantee you that I could draw them anywhere inside that circle as far as bands of heavy snow are concerned. But I'll try it again here. So you've got this band. There's a low here. You've got another low that's out there. This northeast fetch. Then winds go around more northerly over New Jersey, and you'll probably have bands of heavier snow with lighter snows running in between. You get into those bands, you're going to do fairly well. I just make no mistake with the upper low. That's how it works. And also you'll You'll notice that along the immediate coast, you've got some rain in southeastern New England. You've got some rain maybe over eastern Long Island and touching coastal Jersey. That's going to change over as well. We also, by the way, are seeing snow because of the upper low back in parts of Ohio, down through West Virginia, and into the mountains of Western Virginia and Western North Carolina. So there's snow being brought down through the Appalachians. And as we go through the nighttime hours, the thing just kind of rotates around with the upper low. This is at 4 a.m. You still have some snow back west of New York City. It's done in Philadelphia. And now you've got heavier snow in southeastern New England and over Long Island. By 7 a.m., it begins to pull out fairly quickly out to the east. I think this all makes a lot of sense to me with respect to what we're seeing aloft. I'm going to take a look at a couple of other models that I didn't get a chance to look at late this afternoon. I am of the firm believer, I mean, you can look at as many or as few models as you'd like. You could probably look long enough. You're going to find a model that's going to is going to fit your bias. Okay, so some people ask me, well, what's the best model to use? Honestly, if you're forecasting, you should be able to use any model and come up with a good forecast if you understand how those models work. This is the regional Canadian model, the RGEM, and the RGEM has a fairly good track record in its range, which is only 48 or occasionally 54 hours. But look at the RGEM here with that really dark blue heavy snow that forms over New Jersey and heads on arced up to the northwest. That's all in response to the upper low. And you've got that arcing heavy band here on Monday night at 10 p.m. The RGEM is arguing that the heaviest snow will be over New Jersey, with this one band extending northeastward from there, gradually pivots around and it moves out to the east. I will just tell you that it's probably the smartest thing. And this is the RGEM model, so this is only going out to 48 hours. I'm going to switch over to the GFS. And we could, I could show you all the models have the same idea. Each one has a different way of how it sees the atmosphere in terms of the temperature guidance, but they all have basically the same idea. So rather than just repeat and look at the surface, let's just move on. And here you go for 60 hours of storminess into the west. That kind of moves along. Looks like it takes a bit of a southern track there. And it also looks as if by Friday we have another cold front coming through in the east, more energy into the west. Next weekend looks actually, just looking at this with the high, I guess looks pretty decent. Nothing too shabby and not too cold either. And now we're into the week of December 8th through the 15th on the long range. So we got something going to the lakes. All right, so let's take a look at the upper air. My sense is that there's troughing out to our west. And there you have it. So let's backtrack on the upper air and see what it's telling us. Excuse me. Okay, so here we are for today and tomorrow. Your upper low going by to the south off the Virginia coast, pivoting up to Cape Cod by Tuesday morning. Got another trough behind it that kicks it along across the Atlantic. And you still have a bit of a northwest flow going into the weekend in the upper air. It flattens out during the weekend and goes westerly. So this, to me, says seasonal. Next trough dives in to our west. So that's our system that comes along about Wednesday the 11th or 12th. That lifts out. And looks like we have a ridge off the east coast and one off the west coast, which eventually on the west coast trough, the west coast ridge shifts inland. So toward the end of the period, you have a colder look if this verifies. Again, I haven't really looked. This is my first look in 2 days at the long range. So by the time we get to day 16, if this is right, which it probably isn't, you have a Canadian connection. You've got a ridge up in the west. So I bet you your PNA, your Pacific North America Index, is likely positive. And I'm thinking that also with higher pressures up here and lower pressures than normal down here, that your EPO, is your East Pacific oscillation, is probably negative. And that would explain that that colder northwest flow coming out of Canada and driving down into the eastern part of the United States, should it verify? And that's the $1 million question here, is whether it will verify or not. So I think that pretty much sums it up as far as what's going on is concerned. I'm going to come back to the chat board and give me 1 second here and get rid of this. Hope everybody had a great Sunday, by the way. It's been kind of crazy with me. Just so you know, it's and I don't mean this in a nasty way. I really don't. But it's probably not a good idea to message if you're messaging me, and you're not my snow removal people that I work with, or you're not a Patreon member. But if you do message me during stormy periods, I tend to take a while to get back to those messages, and I feel badly because I usually like to respond, and I like to respond quickly. I don't like to leave people hanging, and eventually what winds up happening is that a few messages sort of get lost in the sauce. So if I don't answer your message, I will get to it, and if I miss it, just send it again, because it's possible. I get a lot of them during storms, and it's tough. It's very tough. Chuck Cardillo is on, and Mirtha Gunter is on as well. Johnny Quest, you probably you were asking me about that upper low swinging over West Virginia and Virginia. If the mountain doesn't shadow that snow because of the direction that it's coming from, then you probably will get something. But somebody's going to get shadowed with that, so just bear that in mind. And thanks whoever hit Super Chat tonight. I really appreciate it. I can't see who because the new format for streaming is changed, where I can't see. If I don't catch it when somebody does it, it disappears. So I have no idea who hit Super Chat tonight. But whoever it was, I appreciate your generosity. And thank you very much. Johnny Quest, you heard a cold rain tomorrow in New York City. Well, that's what you might have heard, but you didn't hear it from me, young man. There's a lot of different forecasts out there. Look, I'm going with what I'm seeing with the NAM model and a few others. What particularly struck me about the NAM, by the way, and I will, it just gave me an idea. I can bring this up on the screen. I think we did this once before, but I use the foos, okay? And I'm going to show you what the foos is. So hang on 1 second. Let me bring let's bring up the foos. So let me get to a fresh screen, and we'll bring up the foos. So what the foos is, for those of you who weren't here the last time I brought up the foos is the NAM model in numerical form, okay? And we focus on LaGuardia. I usually look at LaGuardia and Boston. I just want to see how this looks if I highlight. So I'll look at whatever's relevant, but let's look at Washington, Boston, and Philadelphia. Let me just highlight, see if I can just get LaGuardia in here. I'll have to do LaGuardia and Boston together. Okay, so during the in-between hours, you wind up getting 48 hours worth of data. On the 0Z and 12Z runs of the guidance, you get 60 hours worth of data. Now, what the foos does, it breaks down the NAM in numbers that are if you didn't have the maps, you could at least figure it out through the numbers. Now, the important numbers to look at, well, the first two numbers, okay, are the hours. So we're interested in hour 24, which is 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, through hour 42, which is 7 a.m., 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday on the first one. Hour 42 is 7 a.m. on Tuesday. The next three digits So if you look at the 24-hour, you have 24017. So the 017 is precip amount in that 6-hour period, 1700ths. So in the prior 6 hours going into that 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 1700ths of an inch of liquid fell. The next 6 digits are relative humidity levels at the 3 levels of the atmosphere. I forgot the exact. I think it's 925, 875, and 800 millibars. So different levels up to about say 7,000 or 8,000 feet. Joe Rayo knows what the levels are. He's told me 3 or 4 times, and I keep forgetting. But we look at the relative humidity at those levels. The R2 level, which is the second relative humidity set in that 6-number bunch, that's usually a good one to look at with respect to whether precip is actually getting ready to shut off or not, because oftentimes you could have measurable being given, and that R2 level drops off very, very rapidly from the prior 6 hours. So you know that the atmosphere is drying out, or the opposite would be true, that it's moistening up. Then after that, we have vertical motion, lifted index, which are tools that we use to represent lift in the atmosphere or lack thereof. And then we look at pressure and wind, which is in the 3rd column there. That's pressure and wind. And in the last column, we're looking at the thickness, or how cold, the layer of cold air, how thick it is or how cold it is, and the temperatures at that layer. And one of the things that struck me at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, this is at LaGuardia, the temperature, the last 6 numbers there, the T1, T2, T3 numbers, so that's in degrees Celsius, +1, 0, -1. That's actually cold enough for snow. And as we go after that, we go at 30 hours, which is tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock. It's 0, which is freezing, 32, 99, -1, 98, -2. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, it's -2. At the T1 would be fairly close to the ground, -2, -3, -3. So it says to me, and actually, if you look at LaGuardia, even by tomorrow morning, +1, -1, and 0, if you've got precip falling with some kind of intensity, that could in theory fall as snow. But it gives, if we want to do the math, 23, 35, 48, it gives almost half an inch of liquid in that cold air. If you want to count that 1700ths before that, it's almost 7/10 of an inch of liquid in that cold air to New York City. So if you take maybe 65% or 70% of that falls as all snow, it certainly would suggest that you could wind up with, in New York City, several inches of snow accumulation, maybe a little bit higher. Boston does very well here for later tomorrow and tomorrow night, because it gets, starting with 30 hours in Boston, where it's at 0, and then it goes below in terms of temperature. You get 16, 28, plus 34 is 62, plus 31 is 9300ths. I mean, so let's round it off. It gets almost an inch of liquid here, and that's all snow, in my opinion. Philadelphia, which is the last one in that bunch. I got to get the screen to come down a little bit here. And I can't, so I'll have to do that off screen. But Philadelphia gets, in the cold air, 17, 18, 35, 25, 6200ths in the cold air. So if you want to take 60 or 70% of that, making it snow, it says Philadelphia could wind up with 3, 4, or 5 inches if it verifies. And the NAM has been really consistent over the last 3 or 4 runs with this idea. And some of the other models are kind of coming around to that. The European also has been one where it's been showing this, the impact of the upper low and snow bands that are going to be showing up for tomorrow. So let's see. William Huber, nice to see you on board tonight. Robert Brown, also good to see you as well. And at this time tomorrow.